Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a dramatic and intense development in the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, a surprise strike on the Crimean Bridge that has once again left Russia in panic mode. In this video, we'll walk through what reportedly happened, explore the strategic implications, and analyze how this fits into the broader picture of the war. Let's get started. News broke that Ukraine launched a new strike against the Kerch Strait Bridge, commonly called the Crimean Bridge, damaging it once more. The bridge, which links Russian-occupied Crimea to Russia's mainland, has long symbolized Moscow's hold over the peninsula. Damaging it again is not just a blow to infrastructure, but a deeply symbolic strike on Russia's control and its ability to resupply its forces in Crimea and southern Ukraine. Early reports suggest that the strike was unexpected, catching Russia off guard. Some sources claim Ukrainian forces used sea drones or precision-guided munitions, possibly exploiting gaps in Russia's air and maritime defenses in that region. Whatever the method, the success of the operation indicates a degree of sophistication and intelligence gathering that Ukraine has been steadily improving. The result: significant damage to the bridge's roadway and structural supports, rendering parts of it unusable or unsafe for transit. Russia's initial response was one of shock and urgency. State media and Kremlin-affiliated sources went into high gear, emphasizing that efforts were underway to assess the damage and restore connectivity. The tone, however, betrayed underlying fear. The bridge, after all, is not just a physical link, it's a lifeline for military and logistical operations. If disrupted, it constrains Russia's ability to transfer troops, heavy equipment, fuel, and supplies into Crimea and the front lines further south. Now, why is this strike so consequential? Let's break it down. First, it damages Russia's logistical chain. The Crimean Bridge is one of the limited routes Russia uses to funnel reinforcement and resupply into Crimea and beyond. If that link is severed or severely constrained, Russian forces must revert to longer routes, either through the sea, which is vulnerable to Ukrainian naval attacks, or via land routes that are more circuitous and harder to defend. That increases cost, time, and risk of further attacks. Second, it delivers psychological impact. This was a bold, daring strike deep into contested territory. It sends a message: Russia's so-called Fortress Crimea is no longer impregnable. For the Ukrainian public and armed forces, it boosts morale. For Russian leadership and military planners, it compels rethinking of security, defense posture, and how to protect critical infrastructure under constant threat. Third, it forces Russia to divert resources. Protecting the bridge demands more anti-aircraft systems, maritime patrols, surveillance, drones, patrol boats, and so on. That spreads Russian defenses thinner and could reduce their capacity in frontline sectors. If Ukraine can keep throwing in these asymmetric strikes, Russia may be forced into defensive shelling and reinforcement overhead. Fourth, it may influence international support, demonstrating the ability to strike high, while strategic targets convinces allies and neutral observers alike that Ukraine is not passive. It's capable, adaptive, and still fighting back. That may attract continued military, technical, or intelligence assistance, as well as media attention. Let's also consider risks. Striking such a heavily defended target is dangerous. Ukraine risks losing assets, revealing methods or intelligence sources, and provoking escalatory responses from Russia. And Russia likely will respond, perhaps with missile strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure, reprisals in occupied territories, or further militarization of southern regions. The tit-for-tat escalation is real. But in this case, Ukraine seems to have achieved a favorable risk-reward balance. The damage to the bridge was apparently substantial enough to disrupt traffic, yet not provoke a catastrophic backlash beyond what Moscow is already managing. So what might Russia do next? You can expect immediate ramping up of security around all critical infrastructure in Crimea, the Black Sea coast, and supply routes. Russia may start employing more layered defenses, drones, maritime barriers, underwater sensors, rapid reaction naval units, and layered air defenses. They may also be forced to prioritize which assets to protect more heavily, and given limited resources, trade-offs will emerge. In addition, Moscow could retaliate with strikes deeper into Ukraine, aiming to punish or deter further operations. Civilian infrastructure, logistics hubs, energy installations all could be targeted. The shadow of retaliation always looms large in a dynamic conflict. Meanwhile, Russia would also push propaganda to frame this strike as terrorism or proof of Ukrainian aggression, to galvanize domestic, international, and military legitimacy. Let's also reflect on how this strike fits broader Ukrainian strategy. In recent months, Ukraine has increasingly shifted toward counter-infrastructure warfare, targeting bridges, transit nodes, energy lines, supply depots, and transport corridors. By chipping away at Russia's ability to move and reinforce, Ukraine seeks to undermine Russia's standoff advantage, extend their supply lines, and make any further advances or fortifications costlier and more vulnerable. Moreover, this strike underscores the growing role of intelligence, reconnaissance, drone networks, and unmanned systems in modern warfare. Without good eyes and sensors, surprise operations of this scale are hard to pull off. Ukraine likely leveraged a network of drones, signals intercepts, satellite imagery, local informants, and cyber reconnaissance. That integration gives them an edge despite having fewer resources than Russia overall. Another factor to watch is timing. If this attack coincides with other Ukrainian operations elsewhere, offensives in the Kherson direction, pressure in Donbas, or small raids, it forces Russia to respond across multiple fronts. The more Russia is forced to stretch and rebalance, the more opportunities Ukraine finds to exploit weak points. Let me also point out some caveats. News is still emerging and open to confirmation. Russia often underreports or spins damage. Ukraine may overstate successes for propaganda. Some damage may be repairable faster than anticipated. In addition, Russia might have contingency routes or redundant supply lines we don't fully know about. So while the strike is significant, it's not necessarily terminal for Russia's logistics, but it raises the cost and complexity considerably. Public reactions are telling. In Ukraine, social media and local outlets praised the operation, celebrating it as a symbolic victory and proof that Ukraine isn't passive. In Russia, official media tried to downplay the damage, asserting that repairs would begin imminently, while hinting at vengeance. Some commentators expressed fear that the bridge would become a haunted target that draws continual assault rather than becoming secure. Internationally, this reinforces debates about how to assist Ukraine. Some Western policymakers may see this as evidence that further deliveries of precision weapons, drones, long-range missile systems, and intelligence support are crucial. Others may worry about escalation risks. Meanwhile, neutral countries and observers see yet another sign that the war remains unresolved, mobile, and volatile. From a military, technical perspective, analysts will behold the strike carefully. They'll ask what kind of weapon was used, what was its range, guidance, stealth, or evasion features, how did Ukraine bypass or suppress Russian defenses, what was the strike vector from sea, air, or land? Was it coordinated with diversionary attacks elsewhere? The answers to these questions may shape assumptions about Ukraine's future operational options. So what's next? First, expect repairs or at least temporary bypass solutions. Russia will work to restore partial traffic, possibly via limited lanes or alternative structural supports, to resume some flow, but repairs under threat of renewed attack are slow and risky. Second, anticipate further Ukrainian attempts on infrastructure, nodes not limited to this bridge, but including supply depots, rail bridges, maritime choke points, energy grids, and transport corridors. Each successful strike forces Russia to invest more defensively, which drains its operational flexibility. Third, monitor Russia's retaliatory moves. They may target civilian infrastructure deep in Ukraine, attempt missile barrages, or escalate in other sectors. The question, can Ukraine absorb retaliation while pressing forward? Fourth, international response. If the strike and subsequent operations prove effective, Ukraine may attract more advanced weapons, intelligence sharing, drones, ECM electronic countermeasures, satellite data, all reinforcing their capacity. That in turn may shift the balance further or tilt future offensives. Fifth, the symbolic dimension. Once the Crimean Bridge is not safe, what does that say about Russian occupation security? It undermines the narrative of Russia's unassailable control over Crimea. For Ukrainians, it's a message: occupation is contested. That morale dimension, though intangible, is powerful. As we wrap up, let me underscore, this strike doesn't by itself turn the war, but it does change the dynamics. It amplifies pressure on Russia, forces them to reallocate resources defensively, and demonstrates Ukraine's growing competence in precision strikes. In a conflict where momentum, surprise, and flexibility count hugely, such actions can ripple outward far beyond the physical damage. So stay tuned. In coming days, we'll likely see countermeasures, Russian statements, propaganda maneuvers, and maybe more strikes. We'll track repair progress, satellite images, open source intelligence, and cross-check what each side claims versus what can be independently verified. If you found this analysis helpful, do hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss updates as this story unfolds. And drop your thoughts below. How significant do you think this strike is? Will Russia be able to recover, or is this a turning point? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon with more updates.